Hello, it is Thursday, April 6, 2023 at 9:16 a.m. Eastern Time, USA. I'm Mitch Miller. This is my video journal. So I want to talk today. So I twisted up my mustache. Going to Costa Rica next Thursday. Figure and I'm possibly probably scuba diving. So I'm going to need to shave this mustache to get the mask to seal. So I'll wear the mustache down, go through the Costa Rica passport system. Now the United States passport system, I haven't left the country since 2016. Hillary tells me that it's all photograph type style situation now. So we'll test this system while we're at it, right? Have the mustache when I get to Costa Rica. If they take a picture down there, I'll have the mustache goatee. On the way back, coming into Miami, I'll be clean shaven, go through passport, so on and so forth. That is, unless I'm intercepted in some way before I come back. I don't know what kind of plans we got going on here. I think the ship plan is important. I've pointed out some of the key moves that I think it should make, and I'm going to add to that a European move towards the end of the journey. Other than that, it's up to the powers that be to come up with the best scenario with the time period we're working with to get over to Europe and hopefully work on ending the war between Ukraine and Russia. Now, as I said, the agreement when we sent up satellites was 3 satellite systems, a Chinese satellite system of 2, a Russian satellite system of 2, and a United States satellite system of 2. So there's 3. So I figure if you work up 3 options, put them in front of me, I'll figure out what the best scenario would be, right? If I'm approached on my trip in Costa Rica, which I'm going to say something should happen by the 19th of April, right? If the government's going to act, or the military's going to act, I think it should happen by the 20th of April, basically. Now, I've suggested you could send me a phone through the mail, right? Maybe some people say I should meet with some kind of technician or government employee or military employee. I'm up for that. I just don't know if it's in Costa Rica, that's far from any government building, and it could be in a hotel room where we unplug the TV and discuss different scenarios, right? So again, that's probably the ideal situation, but at the very least, the military, I give the United States military permission to enter my home. The front door key is under the little gnome out on the front porch. They can enter my home, deliver a package with a phone, a bundle of checks, a Navy Federal Credit Union debit card, so on and so forth. It'll look like one of the people watching our house just brought the package in from the mail, right? So at the very least, they could do that if they don't want to actually engage with me in any way. But again, I think this Russian oligarch ship should be legally purchased by the United States military, should be owned by the United States military to make it a neutral vessel. Well, me being on it would make it the neutral vessel, I guess. Me and my family. It should, when we get to Thessaloniki, transfer hands to the EU military, whether that's just a token $1 purchase, then it would be under EU military ownership. Then we have the EU military and the Russian military both being able to access that ship. Whether there's a point where I come on and verify that none of the equipment, if I come on and take with my domestic phone, take pictures of all the televisions on board the ship, that could be an option to make sure that nothing was altered in any way. Or we use a different ship. I don't know. I just know that I'm trying to set standard operating procedure for what the techies and the military-industrial complex have brought upon us, a world where autonomous fighting robots are going to be the future of warfare. So let's think about this logically and establish neutral parties so that we can progress with this. I would have never, growing up in Western Pennsylvania, I didn't think this is where things were going to go. But we're here, you built them, you have the satellite systems, you did all this stuff, so now we got to deal with it. Let me see. Oh, the Hillary's interview. I think it went well. I think she did well. The only thing, we learn our lessons. So any government agency out there in any country, learned our lessons. The HD camera, and it doesn't probably come through on my little video that I took and some on the internet, but on the HD, on my HD TV, the HD camera directly broadcasts Hillary's legs. They look, you can see every follicle of shaved hair, shaved legs on there. Every pimple of every follicle on her legs shows up. They kind of look hairy on there. They don't look great in HD, right? So we learn our lessons. If she's going to show her legs like that, she probably should wear pantyhose or something like that. That's probably what they're for. Simple tip that anybody can take away. So any government, it's something to consider. Now, I'm not going to point that out to her. I don't know if she'll ever watch the HD version or just watch it on the internet. I just let it go. If she points it out, then I'll say we learned our lessons. Next time you're on TV, this is what you should do. Or when she's about to go on a TV interview next time, I'll say, what are you wearing? Hey, you should really consider putting on some pantyhose. Just something I noticed. So, other than that, her speaking was well. She got out critical information about the State Department. There's Zelda. Hey, Zelda. You climbing up on there, huh? Hopefully, other countries can model their State Department after the United States. We have a pretty good State Department as far as alerts and things like that, and that's good information. The other thing I want to say about Hillary, again, we're working on a program for her to get paid at least what she gets paid at the university so that she can leave the university, travel with me, and change the world for a better place, to a better place. So the EU program to validate EU military bank accounts. In addition to that, while we're on the ship, while we're building this social media platform, we can do a podcast because I'm all about women's rights, female rights. She is too. So with a dual citizenship, if she had a German and United States citizenship, we could have the German intelligence agency work with the United States FBI and cross-reference what rights a German passport grants a citizen and what rights a U.S. passport grants a citizen entering this country, entering that country, entering that other country. What are the benefits? What are the rights? and she can do a podcast that I can set up. I don't have to talk at all. She could do all the talking. And just a bullet list of here's the rights you'll have as a U.S. citizen compared to here's the rights as a German citizen. And, maybe she does a couple countries on each podcast. Just bam, bam, brief podcast. And we can do this with other dual citizenship scenarios going forward so that the supercomputers have a better idea from the actual government agencies of what rights people will be granted. That should inform them to help inform people about where to seek asylum, where to seek refugee status, so on and so forth, to try to get citizenship. So that we have people with information about white-collar crime, so on and so forth, going to the places that are best suited to stand up to that white-collar crime or that government corruption, right? So that's what we're working towards. So that being said, as far as cover, I'm out in the open, operating very publicly on some regards, not on this private video journal. So I've put a lot of ideas out there. As far as any kind of cover, I don't really need it, but as far as explaining why I'm on a yacht in the EU, I can explain to my friends and family that someone wanted to fund one of my social media ideas, and we're building that social media platform. Hillary's helping, so on and so forth. As far as the Wormy Chestnut, I can explain to my father, who read the peace treaty, hey, this is catching some traction internationally. There's interest in building these dueling pistols using that wood. What's the top price that I should pay you to have as much of that wood as possible, right? So I want to talk a little bit about why it's important that we stabilize the banking industry and therefore the economy. Let's just think logically about the economy. For the past 30 years, a huge portion of the population, the baby boomers, have been putting money into the stock market for their retirement. They've been putting money into the banking industry for their retirement. They've been pumping up the economy in the banking industry with untaxed retirement dollars, right? Now that whole population is going to start drawing that money out of the economy, and while they're spending the money into the economy, they're drawing it out of the base principle of the economy. So we need to make sure that as they spend that money back into the economy, it's getting equally dispersed to raise the wages of everyone so that we can stabilize the economy, right? So that people are making more wages and then putting money in to retirement. We also should have the option of my real estate fund. That should be on the table, because then we have an option to not put that money into the stock market, which puts pressure on these CEOs and these executives to become transparent with their companies. Hey, we'll invest in your company through our 401ks if you start being transparent about your decision-making processes, about your slave labor policies, about your international slave labor policies, so on and so forth. And I believe that's what my generation wants to do. We're done with slave labor. But it's just the nuts and bolts of it. Do the math, think about it. There's going to be a bunch of executives that are used to making $100 million a year, bankers making $100 million a year, that are going to have to take a pay cut because that money's not pumping into the economy the way it was. Statistically, the population skew isn't the same And so therefore, even if everyone was still stuck with a 401k program, it just wouldn't be there. And they don't have the expendable income to put into retirement because of the wage gap and the executives making so much money and not dispersing it to their employees. Something's got to give here. I'm the guy to help making a smooth transition, right? We're fine with corrections. We don't want failures and total breakdowns, right? So let's avoid that. Let's get the supercomputers to help us investigate corruption, fraud in the system. They can beat the CAPTCHAs, starting to beat the CAPTCHAs now, so they can report certain things. If we get them TTY or TTD numbers, they can report things, so on and so forth. So, right, they can pose as a disabled person typing from a TTY. That's an option. These are all options for artificial intelligence to report fraud. So be open to those avenues, and as a government agency. So that's why I have a plan to help the government and the tech sector move forward. And that's what I'm saying with this April 20th deadline, is if something doesn't happen by then, maybe the tech sector will act and give $20, and maybe enough of that will build up that I can actually purchase that yacht myself. I don't know. I would probably use it for nonprofits, and it seems kind of crazy to buy a yacht and go over to Europe without any type of government approval. But there's options there, right? So I wanted to talk about, while we're talking about supercomputers, right? I talked about executives that get fed a bunch of information, make cutthroat decisions because all they're responsible to is the investors and making the most amount of profit. Anyone with math can do that job. What happens with me is the supercomputers, through the media I engage with, through domestic devices, feed me the news clips and the information I need to know to make these videos, to make different decisions. Another good news source I use is Reddit. I don't use it every day, but it gives good headlines. It's kind of crowd-funded, crowd-based news, and the algorithm usually gives me good information. So these supercomputers feed me information, and I make ethical decisions based on my ethics, grounded in a working class background, to make decisions and put out information. So that being said, I want to talk about Skellefteå in Sweden. That was brought to my attention through Reddit. This is a town in Sweden, northern Sweden, where a former Tesla vice president started a company to recycle the lithium batteries in cars and other things. They grind them up and they turn them into their elemental metals, and they recycle the batteries. Very critical for our future here, right? So what I'm proposing is, once the yacht gets to Norway and Hillary is safely maybe in Iceland or wherever, or stays with the yacht in Norway, we move overland across the top of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. But while we're coming across Sweden, we stop at Skellefteå, and we invite, I'm now formally inviting representatives from China and from Russia and the United States to meet there at that factory to discuss policy to share technology with China and Russia so that they can develop the same factories if they aren't already developing them in their country. To expand the Swedish company to the United States, right? We're the country of corporations and franchises. I think it's good for Sweden to franchise or build or still retain ownership of their technology in the United States. So we're going to try to expand this technology, and as a former minor union person, I would insist that we unilaterally agree to systematically raise the wages of miners in the Congo in Africa who are responsible for mining cobalt, but all miners in Africa. 70% of the world's cobalt comes from Congo. That helps make these batteries. So let's raise their wages. Let's agree to this unilaterally to get those wages raised in Congo, and we will work to stabilize their economy and their government in any ways that the Congo people vote on and agree to. So that's the information that was given to me the other day. So that's another stop on this journey that I'm proposing. Other than that, it's up to the U.S. military, the EU military, what the best movements are. I'm along for the ride. I'll make these videos. I'll watch the news. I'll make the podcast with Hillary. And most importantly, we'll build this social media platform. And the purpose of me going to Ukraine is not only to try to promote peace, but if Macron doesn't work on this peace treaty, I have no validation in it other than I represent the supercomputers, which a lot of people will just dismiss as insanity. The other thing for me to go to Ukraine is to verify sites where we can house the servers and everything required for this social media platform, right? We're building a social media and hypothetically technology company. It starts on a Russian oligarch ship, but the ground-based systems will be in Ukraine. We'll build them in Ukraine, and we'll build this technology company as we rebuild Ukraine, right? In a non-corrupt, as neutral as possible country next to Russia, right? We don't necessarily, it might be a NATO member state, but it's going to be the most neutral of NATO member states as we can possibly build it. And hopefully Zelensky agrees to as many forms of direct democracy as possible, anti-corruption policies for the government, anti-corruption policies for the rebuilding, the money's used to rebuild Ukraine. So like what I've proposed with militaries being able to see corporate executives' pay structures and where the money from defense budgets and military budgets goes, not to compensation for executives, but to the employees, to the materials, to the things it takes to rebuild. And again, this peace treaty will be added on with policies for artificial intelligence and so on and so forth, cameras on soldiers, so on and so forth. The last thing I want to end with is to talk about my neighbors on the other side. Talked about Dolly over on this side. On the other side, we have the Mahons, Dan and Joanne Mahon. So I put things out on this like 1-800-IRELAND, so on and so forth. And my theory is, if you look at my connections, we stabilize the economy and the government, right? And the economy and the bank, some of the banking sector. So Dan and Joanne Mahon are working class, lower middle class. Dan was a maintenance guy. He's retired at West Penn Hospital, which is the Allegheny Health Network. And Joanne worked for UPMC Shadyside, this hospital, the next closest hospital to me, which is a UPMC Health Network. So it's my belief that their retirement programs, each retirement program plays off each other, right? If we have pairs, they can play off each other as each thing moves around through the economy, and they're cross-verifying and validating those two retirement programs, right? The UPMC employee retirement program and the West Penn employee retirement programs. However, they're invested through 402Bs or whatever Hillary's invested in through, nonprofit or whatever, or if it's a pension. The last thing I'll say is that new information that Dan just told me yesterday or the day before is that he took a 23andMe. He is 100% Irish. Both sets of ancestors come from Ireland. And when I talked about scuba diving, he explained to me that he's gone snorkeling before, somewhere in the Caribbean. He said, yeah, we were driving out to it, and the captain said, this is Epstein's Island. And this was before Epstein got busted. So Dan was snorkeling off of Jeffrey Epstein's island. He's 100% Irish. So for all we know, Ireland was responsible for busting the Epstein sex trafficking ring, just from Dan Mahon being in the vicinity, opening an investigation, so on and so forth. So there's secret agents everywhere, they just don't know it. They're just normal people moving about the world, and certain entities take interest in where they chose to go or where they ended up, and that opens different investigations, right? So that's my theory on that. So that's my neighbors on the other side. We want to make sure they are healthy and live long lives so that those retirement programs are, at least make it through what I'm predicting is going to be some kind of correction. It doesn't have to be a recession if we start the investigation sooner than later. So we're waiting till the 13th. We're on cruise control. I'm going to make some more videos until then, probably, with new information. But the deadline for some kind of, I'm putting all of my podcast, my t-shirt program, everything on hold until I get back from the Caribbean or from Costa Rica, in case I'm approached. I don't want to start moving on public things out there that are going to take my time. I want to get focused on this war situation. So I'm putting all of that on hold. I'm not going to put out a podcast to promote Ken's Campground and the fund for solar panels, even though I should, so that people in my underground network book campsites. I'm holding off on all that. Waiting to the 20th, and then we'll put out and start working on the small scale from what I can do from Utica and Pittsburgh. But there is another option out there. Hopefully we get moving on that, because we can work on the fund, the nonprofits, remotely while I'm doing other things. All right. Again, I just want to say I put out a lot of programs that are interesting and I think will change the world, and that's why I think supercomputers want to work with me, and they want to fund these programs, and they don't want to see recession or anything like that. We need the money pumping into the right programs. I put out a lot of good, solid programs and nonprofit ideas, and I think they want to work with me. So I hope you'll work with me, and let's work to end this war while making a better world, coming to international agreements, taking a step back and saying, whoa, did we, the United States, send up the first domestic satellite? Is that why some countries have animosity towards us? Because we sent up all these satellites without having, even though we had the media structure to have open discussions worldwide, we never had those forums. We just said, all right, we're good to send up communications satellites now, and then that evolves into all kinds of other types of satellites, right? We need to really address that idea that it comes from, we won the space race, right? So now we own space. Is that the thought process? Because that's a flawed process, right? That's not a good thought process in my mind. Intelligent, educated discussion about what it means to send flying craft into space is what should be done, and that's what I'm proposing, is that we should have intelligent discussion about what it means to have unmanned drone aircraft flying the skies, right? There should be a world forum about these types of things, and I'm happy to moderate and facilitate that forum everywhere I go. So thanks for watching. Join me probably next week, but maybe tomorrow. Thanks for watching.